Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another Kano Tryharding Modern. We'll be playing the same Tron list as before, just trying to get another rep in with it. See, I remember I was just talking about basically flex slots the last time I was playing this, so I'm not going to make any personal adjustments. I'm just going to run it through again, and we're going to see what happens. I like how Moto always picks a random deck for me. It's kind of annoying. It should know to, like, select the one that I left my cursor on. Alright, I'll see you guys in round one. Alrighty, round one. I will be on the play. This is not a good hand. This, on the other hand, is. We're going to put back Sylvan Scrying, and we will start Urza's Mine into Relic of Progenitus. We had a fun St. Patrick's Day stream last night, the VOD for which should go up about an hour after this video does. I must warn you, we did some Vintage Cube, and the draft stipulation for Vintage Cube was to speak only in a off-brand Marvin the Martian voice, aka Melvin the Mercurian, and draft mono green. So it was a fun time, but it was very interesting. So Urza's Mine, Urza's Power Plant, we're either against Death and Taxes or we are against okay, we are against Death and Taxes. I was gonna say Colossus Hammer. They hit us for 1, and they attacked with the core. I don't think we have any Dismembers in the main deck of this one. We untap, draw Forest, play Tower, play Karn. He costs 5. That's right, hang on. What can I wish for out of this side that would be good against my opponent that I can play on 2 or less mana? Probably Walking Ballista, actually. So wish with Karn. We'll get a Walking Ballista and play it. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play a Field of Ruin. This is quite distressing, actually. Opponent goes to combat. They attack. I should have just pinged Thalia. I was thinking that, like, oh, my opponent is going to do something else with Thalia, or, like, play a second one or something. It was kind of a terrible assumption. So if they activate Field, we're going to 4 mana. We can't do anything with our mana on our draw step. Get a Forest. Okay, go to our main. Let's Ancient Stirrings and see if we can't hit a tower. We did not. So we'll take a star, rest to the bottom. We want to wish for something relatively cheap, which I think is going to be Sky Sovereign now. We won't be able to play it for probably a couple of turns at least, but we can't save Karn. So play a Forest, then play Star. Pass the turn. The reason I didn't get Bridge is it's going to be very hard for us to empty our hand, and my opponent is definitely main decking Skyclave Apparitions, which makes Bridge not that great versus the mono white aggro deck. There it is. They could take Star, and they do. Okay. They kill Karn. They're going to leave up the core, Giver of Runes. We untap and draw Star. Play Star. Sack it for green. Another Power Plant. Play Power Plant. Play Star. There's not a lot we can actually play if I cycle it, but I do want to cycle it so that I can try and draw another land. I don't want my opponent to play like another Skyclave Apparition and deal with it. We are a tower away from winning the game, because we just play Ugin and exile the whole board. Opponent hits us for 4. We untap. We draw an Expedition map, but we cannot search. We have to pay 2 mana for map, 2 mana for Arbiter, and then 2 mana to search. So we still play it, as it's the only castable card in our hand, but we can't do anything with it until our next turn at the fastest. And even if we do that, we're only going to have 5 mana post-tower, so I really hope we just draw a tower. Yep, there's another Skyclave. So I need to either hit Sylvan Scrying... No, Sylvan Scrying doesn't work. I need to hit Ancient Stirrings, or I need to top deck a tower. And this is mainly due to not killing Thalia with Walking Ballista when I had the chance. And tower. There it is. So play tower. Play Ugin. Should be game over. Nice. Well, we knew what needed to happen. We're bringing in Dismember. What are we dropping for Dismember? Probably an Ulamog and 1 relic. I like keeping at least a relic to help with cycling and an Ulamog if we really, really, really need a top end, but it's unlikely that we will ever get there. Keeping in just the relics is somewhat reasonable, because there's an argument to be made that we just need to draw as much as possible. I could bring in Nature's Claim if I wanted to for Aether Vial, or like a Phyrexian Revoker, but I doubt that my opponent is playing Phyrexian Revoker. And depending on their start, Vial may not actually help them that much. Another natural Tron hand, and we're starting with a Worm Coil, so I'm going to keep. Opponent starts Ghost Quarter into an Aether Vial. We draw Karn, Great Creator. Play Power Plant. Play Chromatic Sphere. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. Aether Vial ticking up to 1. Opponent plays a Horizon Canopy into an Arbiter, so we cannot Sylvan Scrying. We draw Ugin. Play an Urza's Mine. Pass the turn. Depending on what my opponent does... I F6'd and couldn't turn off auto yields in time. What I probably should have done is, in response to the Giver of Runes, cycled for black to see if I could hit a Dismember. Opponent plays a Sunbaked Canyon. They're going to Vial in another 2-drop. Thalia. Okay. So they go to combat. Attack us for 2. We take 2. And opponent passes. We untap. We draw an Urza's Mine. So now we have redundant pieces for both. Doesn't really matter what we cycle here. Pay for Arbiter. Get a Forest. Go to our main. Play a Mine, and then we'll... I can't Scrying. I was going to say, then we'll Scrying for Mine as a backup, but pass the turn. So we have to pray for not another Field of Ruin or Ghost Quarter effect. We can deal with Thalia. Opponent plays another Giver. Goes to combat. Hits us for 4. Okay, we take 4. Untap. Draw Thragtusk. Play an Urza's Tower. Now, I can play Karn for 5. And I can get Walking Ballista. But that's not going to do very much considering my opponent has Giver of Runes. I think the play here, to play as much around Path to Exile as possible, is to play Thragtusk. It guarantees us life gain. And gives us enough mana to pay for a search with Leonin Arbiter if we need to. Opponent is vialing in a 3-drop. Spell Queller? Mirren Crusader. Alright. Well, we only need 1 more mana and we're holding it. So we basically just have to dodge a Ghost Quarter here. And if we do, we just Ugin the board away and everything's hunky-dory. Opponent untaps. Aether Vial probably staying on 3. Yep. Opponent can get a redraw with Horizon Canopy or Sunbaked Canyon. They're playing Phyrexian Revoker. Okay. So they'll probably name Ugin, as that's the most devastating thing we can do. They're naming Oblivion Stone. I would have named Ugin, but that's me. Opponent's going to give Thalia pro green, so they can swing with Mirren Crusader and Thalia. I have no reason to suspect they're running blue at all, but like they could have Glasspool Mimic on Revoker in response to Ugin, which would be pretty bad for us. We draw an Ancient Stirrings. Play Power Plant. Play Ugin, and the game is over. Yep, opponent had like a 50-50 chance on that, and they just chose incorrectly. We did have Oblivion Stone in the deck, so it's not like it was an improper name or anything like that, though. So, alright, well, I will see you guys in round 2. Alright, round 2, here we go. We are on the play. This is an okay hand, but I think we can do better. Opponent is on a Lurrus deck of some kind. I'm going to keep this, and I'm going to put back Ancient Stirrings. Odds are they're playing Death Shadow. They could be playing Mill because Mill is getting popular. But I definitely want a Relic out because that can protect me from Surgical if it's Mill. It can shrink Goyfs if they're Death Shadow. It's not very useful versus Burn. Versus Burn, it's just a cantrip. They start Blood Crypt, Bauble, make them exile Bloodstained Mire. They crack Bauble, then play Courier. Okay, this is probably Rakdos. Death Shadow has a lot of burn elements in it. So we take 1 and go to 19. They play a second Bauble. We untap, they draw a card. Then we draw Ugin. Play an Urza's Tower. Exile the Bauble. Pass the turn. I'll probably end up cracking Relic pretty early because we're going to need We're going to need to draw something we can play. Okay. Opponent plays a Bloodstained Mire and cracks it immediately. Shocking themselves for a Thoughtseize. Alright. They probably take Karn or Ugin, because those are the two things that will come down the fastest. Probably Karn, because if we top deck Power Plant, they might be in trouble if we actually resolve that. They take Ugin. Interesting. They attack us for 1. We go to 18. So the reason that they probably took Ugin over Karn is Karn we have to -3 to kill a creature or anything like that. And they probably have a Lightning Bolt. We draw the wrong Urza's land, followed by a second Ugin. Play Blast Zone. Pass the turn. This gets us to effectively the same amount of mana if we draw Power Plant as Urza's Mine would, but also gives us the opportunity to tick Blast Zone up to 2, potentially. They use up Lightning Bolt. Okay. Opponent shocks a third Blood Crypt. Okay, they attack with Courier. They're casting Mutagenic Growth. Just trying to get in for as much damage while they can, it looks like. Battle Rage. So this is going to take us down to 9. And they're doing this now before we have mana to activate Blast Zone. Then they pass. We untap. Draw Karn. Well, if I try and crack Blast Zone, they'll just sack Bombat Courier, and this may force them to do the same thing anyway. It does not. -2 Karn. We'll go ahead and Wish, and... what's best here? Don't really need to interact with their grave. Karn probably will not survive due to a Lightning Bolt. I think Walking Ballista is our best pickup here. Not by a lot. It's the only thing we can guarantee we're going to play next turn. So, pass the turn. Opponent did not immediately Lightning Bolt Karn. They play a Swamp. Thoughtseize. They see Ballista, another Ugin. Okay. They can have Lightning Bolt if they want to crack Courier. Opponent attacks with Double Strike at Karn. Alright, well Karn is still around. We draw Big Karn Liberated. So, kill Courier now, because they can't crack it. They are now Hellbent. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps and draws. Probably puts Lurrus into their hand unless they drew something really good. Yep, okay. Thoughtseize again. Well, we have redundant Karns. They take Ugin. Once again, the scariest thing. We draw another tower. It's not really what we want. I can wish for a Trinisphere to make them only play Lurrus. I could wish for an Ensnaring Bridge, but I can't get my hand empty enough, and they could just destroy it. Because if we uptick Karn, they just replay Courier, and then he stays at 2, and that does nothing, and we're probably going to lose him anyway. I could get Cage, but then my opponent can't replay creatures, but they can still get value out of Lurrus. It's kind of tough. Well, we're playing Tower. I could wish for Relic as well. Relic, I think, is actually a bit better. And the reason that I'm doing this is because that way I can stop Lurrus from getting any value for a turn while also getting deeper in my deck. And this doesn't lock me out of, like, chaining Chromatic Spheres and Stars, which I've got a feeling I may need to do. So, sack Relic. It also puts Walking Ballista back in exile, if I need to wish for it again. Opponent plays a Polluted Delta and passes. We untap and draw Karn. Play Expedition Map. Crack Map. Get a Power Plant. Play Power Plant. And next turn we got Big Papa Ulamog. We're almost to the point we can play 2 Karns in one turn. Opponent is down to 3 life. They attack us with Lurrus, which will put us they'll put them up to 6 and us down to 6. They have Temur Battle Rage, which is pretty bad news for us, because that puts us dead to Lightning Bolt. We draw Worm Coil. Yeah, Ulamog is still the safest bet here. We'll take them off white, though I'm not sure how important that is. I could have played Worm Coil, and that may have been safer, actually, now that I think about it, but we're probably still just dead to a top deck Bolt. Alright. We got there. Just barely. So versus my opponent, I think I'm going to bring in Veil of Summer. I'm going to drop an Ulamog. And I want to put a Worm Coil engine in the side so I can wish for it. I don't think Veil is a spectacular card to be playing against Hand Hate, but it's got some edge cases where it can be very good. And I think I would rather have it in hand than a 10-mana unplayable Ulamog. Okay, this is not a keepable hand. We do have to be aware that my opponent is probably going to lead on Hand Hate, which is what's going to make this hand excellent. It's pretty good. Natural Tron Karn, we're going to put back Expedition Map. If my opponent leads on Inquisition, they can take Ancient Stirrings, or they can take Chromatic Sphere. Stirrings, I think, would be better to take if they let on Inquisition. If they Thoughtseize me, they'll probably take Karn. They mulled to 6, they started Bauble, and Bombat Courier. Alright, cool. We get hit for 1, they draw a card. We draw Sylvan Scrying. So play Power Plant, play Chromatic Sphere, pass the turn. Opponent untaps, plays a Marsh Flats, fetches, shocks a Blood Crypt, plays a Scourge of the Skyclaves. Alright. We untap, we draw Karn, Great Creator. Sack Sphere for green. We draw a second tower. So, Ancient Stirrings. We'll get a Chromatic Sphere. Rest of the bottom. Play tower, play Chromatic Sphere. Pass the turn. So next turn, we can either play Karn, Great Creator, and get something like Ensnaring Bridge, or we can get, we can play Karn Liberated and take out the Scourge. Okay, we get Thoughtseized. They take Karn, Great Creator, as it's probably the more versatile of the two options we have. They play a second Scourge. Okay, we get hit for 3. Down to 15. We untap and draw Expedition Map. Players is mine. Cycle for green. Yep, gotta play Karn this turn. So we have 2 options. 3 options. We can downtick to take out a Scourge, but we are dead to Temur Battle Rage. 100%. I can downtick to kill Bombat Courier and stop my opponent from drawing. We're still dead to Temur Battle Rage that way. Uptick is the worst option, because Karn isn't going to survive anyway. Kill Courier. Pass the turn. I guess this also leaves me dead to Lightning Bolt. Okay, we got bolted. But pretty sure that was going to happen anyway. Alright. I could bring in Dismember. I'm not a big fan of playing Dismember versus Scourge of the Skyclave, though, so I would like to play first. Okay, I will keep this hand. We're pretty close to Tron. We gotta get a little bit lucky. We're not absolutely crippled by Hand Hate, but it is good against this hand. So start Chromatic Sphere, pass the turn. Obviously, if they use Hand Hate, they're gonna take Ancient Stirrings like 100%. They lead on Bauble. Crack Bauble. Play Polluted Delta, crack Polluted Delta. Get a Blood Crypt untapped. Pithing Needle on Karn, the Great Creator. Okay. We untap, they draw a card, we draw Ugin. Cycle Sphere for green. Get a Worm Coil, Ancient Stirrings. We need an Urza's Mine. That is not an Urza's Mine. So I'm going to take a Forest. Rest of the bottom. Play an Urza's Tower. Play a Relic. Start making my opponent eat their graveyard. Pass the turn. Obviously, best top deck here is mine. If we get it, we'll probably just Windmill Slam a Worm Coil if they play a threat, or a Karn Liberated if they do not. If we play Karn Liberated, we're not worried about Karn getting bolted, so we would downtick to try and disrupt our opponent's mana as much as possible. We're getting Thoughtseized. The real gotcha here is if my opponent has a Surgical for our other Worm Coil. They take Worm Coil because that's the card that's hardest for them to deal with. They play a Bloodstained Mire. You crack it immediately. Shocking. For a Death Shadow. Okay. We untap. We draw Karn, Great Creator. Cycle Relic, because I want to draw a Sylvan Scrying or an Urza's Mine. That is neither of those things. Play a Forest. Pass the turn. Opponent plays a Sunbaked Canyon. And a Dark Confidant. And a Bombat Courier, basically emptying their hand. They hit us for 3. We untap. They look at the top card of our deck. We draw an Urza's Mine. So along comes Ugin. -2 Ugin. Okay, opponent stuck with just a Bombat Courier. They untap, draw an extra card. They need 2 bolts or another Courier and a bolt to kill Ugin. And we're playing Karn or Wormcoil next turn. Yep, we're getting Thought Seized. They take Wormcoil, because once again, that's one of the harder cards for them to deal with. I think they're attacking us. Yeah. Okay. They sack Courier to draw 2 cards, pitching a Swamp. We untap. Draw Sylvan Scrying. Play Karn. Uptick on my opponent's hand. They give us a Marsh Flats. Uptick Ugin on my opponent. Play a Forest. Sylvan Scrying. We're going to go get Blast Zone, because the majority of their threats are 1 CMC. Okay, opponent scoops the match. Nice. With really, really good Tron luck these first 2 matches. I hope it keeps up. Okay. Round 3 will be on the draw. This is a mulligan. This is a keep. Put back a Forest. Opponent starts Celestial Colonnade. We start Urza's Mine, Expedition Map. So our opponent is playing Blue-White Control, which is, according to MTG Goldfish, the most played deck in Modern right now. Whether or not that's actually true, I don't know for sure. Well, we drew Karn Liberated, so it's going to be a turn 3 Karn. We're going to try and play around a Tail's End. Pass the turn. This does not play very well around Field of Ruin, but we have an extra Expedition Map if we need to. Okay, opponent plays a Flooded Strand and passes. We untap and draw Urza's Tower. I am not slamming Karn into this. What I'm going to do here is play a Relic, play a Sphere, and play a map. I want my opponent to think I don't have it. Basically, if they have something like a Jace the Mind Sculptor, I want them to play that next turn. Just want them to think we got kind of lucky on the Tron assembly with no payoff, because we did mulligan. So opponent fetches up a Hallowed Fountain tapped. They untap. They play a Flooded Strand. And then they pass. So we are going to crack Expedition Map, get a Sanctum of Ugin, untap, draw another Urza's Tower. Perfect. Play Sanctum. Play Karn. Float mana. And sack Sanctum to get Ulamog. Opponent fetches Flooded Strand, so they're probably going to use Cryptic here. Yep. Bouncing the Sanctum to hand. Well, that does mean we can't sack it. So sack Sphere for green, exile the Graves, pass the turn. Next turn we can cast Thragtusk. Not that that does anything, but best top deck would be an Ulamog. Okay, opponent does have Jace the Mind Sculptor. Probably going to Brainstorm. Yep. Alright, we untap. We really need an Ulamog. That is not an Ulamog. So play a Forest. Play Thragtusk. This does basically nothing, but pass the turn. I think pre-board, Blue-White Control is going to be a pretty difficult matchup. Probably even post-board, because we're not maxed out on Veil of Summer. Okay, they put Thragtusk back in our deck, so we're going to have to redraw it, which is very unfortunate. They can't even just bounce the token with Jace, and that's exactly what they did. They shock Hallowed Fountain. We untap. We draw Chromatic Star. So play Sanctum. Play Star. Pass the turn. We know the top card of our deck is Thragtusk, and we do not have a way to shuffle. Opponent opts. They untap. They play a field. We have a completely redundant copy of Tron, so we actually want our opponent to field on their turn. In fact, if they field Tower on their turn, that gives us 2 chances to draw Ulamog and play him next turn. Yeah, I don't think opponent realizes this, but we did not want to draw that Thragtusk. Get a Forest. Problem is, Ulamog doesn't even really do enough at this point because my opponent's made so many land drops. So we untap. We draw Ancient Stirrings. Sack Star for green. Let's see what we draw. Blast Zone. Ancient Stirrings. There's Ulamog. The only problem with Ulamog is it can get Cryptic, and I only have 9 mana this turn. So I'm just going to play out another Urza's Mine and pass the turn and pretend I don't have a tower because my opponent hasn't seen my hand. Fact or fiction? Wow, Luminarch Ascension? You can have Teferi, Opt, or the other 3. Okay, they take Luminarch Ascension Pile with field, so I'm glad I didn't play out the Urza's Tower. One of Brainstorms. Maybe it was right to try and play out Karn on 3, because I guess I did. The only thing I didn't account for was them having Cryptic, as opposed to like an Archmage's Charm or a Mana Leak or something like that. Okay, they play Luminarch Ascension. They played field. They're holding an Oust. We untap. Draw Oblivion Stone. So, play Power Plant. Play O-Stone. They should counter this. Not that it matters, because my opponent is going to have enough counter spells. They have enough cards in hand. Alright, opponent untaps. It looks like Oust is their removal of choice, and honestly, I am okay with that. Like, as far as a control player goes, I think this card is actually extremely underrated, especially in the current metagame. Alright, well, 3 fields is hard to beat. I'm not going to continue playing this out. So, versus my opponent, we definitely want the Veils of Summer, and we probably want a Nature's Claim or two. What do we cut? Versus our opponent's deck, I think cutting an Ugin is correct. I think cutting a Wormcoil is correct. And they probably have Snapcasters, but honestly, I think we need to cut Relics here, and we'll run it back like this. So, Oust is really, really good versus certain creature decks, because in a way, forcing your opponent to redraw creatures that don't have enough value upon entering the battlefield is in generally really good. Like, if you make your opponent redraw a Noble Hierarch, that's a really bad top deck at pretty much every point of the game except turn 1. It also gains your opponent life, a set amount of life. So if you have to switch over to Colonnade Beats, it's not so much life they gain that it's a problem. But if they switch over to, like, if they're playing Death Shadow, it's really important that you can make them gain life, because then it sets their game plan back really far. And also their creatures don't do anything when they enter the battlefield, unless they're like Kroxa. But, like, playing, they play Death Shadow, you gain them life, and then they have to redraw Death Shadow, or they play Scourge of the Skyclaves, you gain them life, and then they have to redraw and replay it. I would like to play first. This hand is not good. This hand is tolerable, but still not great. Alright, I'm going to keep this, and I'm going to put back Ancient Stirrings. We are going to start Star Sylvan Scrying, rather than Map, because the lowest odds that anything is going to get countered is on our turn 2, because we're on the play. I really don't think I'm winning this match, though. Like, I don't like the Tron versus Control matchup as much as I used to. They're even playing Ancestral Visions. Okay, we draw Karn Liberated, sack for green, we get a tower, Sylvan Scrying for Power Plant, pass the turn. Next turn we can play Karn Great Creator through a Mana Leak. And then I would probably get something like, I don't know, Trinisphere. Second Karn Great Creator is great. Not to be redundant. Okay, that resolves. I think I'm going to start coding, because Trinisphere gets even better next turn. Okay, they did have a Mana Leak, so I am very happy with my decision. Play Expedition Map. Pass the turn. So next turn we can play Trinisphere through another Mana Leak, but not an Archmage's Charm. Okay, my opponent plays Field. I mean, if they field us on our draw step, we can just Expedition Map for whatever we want. Alright, get a forest. They have a basic island. We untap. Draw Ancient Stirrings. What do I do here? If I Stirrings into a power plant, that's the highest upside. Yeah, we're gonna try it. There's the power plant. Rest of the bottom. Play power plant. Now we wish. And we're gonna get Trinisphere. Play Trinisphere. Then we play Karn Great Creator. Keeping the new one. And then we wish for Sundering Titan. Pass the turn. Because now, Ancestral Visions, my opponent has to pay 3 mana for, which, I mean, it's still a very good card. 3 mana to draw 3 cards is not a bad rate, but the fact that they have to tap out to do that, yeah. Cool. I was pretty confident that Trinisphere was going to be GG's, which is why I went for the coding first, even though the Trinisphere would have been better if I was able to land it on turn 3. I wasn't confident I could. So that was the concept between why I went for Liquid Metal Coating, because I was pretty sure it was going to get countered, and then we were going to go for a Trinisphere next turn. Oh, this hand is slow. We can do better. Down to 5. That's not great. Get rid of O-Stone, get rid of a tower. Now, if we just top deck like 2 Tron pieces in a row, that's great. But it's unlikely to happen. Okay. Start tower, play map. Pass the turn. One thing that you have to be aware of when you mulligan versus control is the more times you mulligan, it basically exponentially increases the likelihood your opponent is going to Force of Negation your first land tutor. So like if they've got it and you mull to 5, almost like 10 out of 10 times they'll Force of Negation your expedition map. So be aware of how the hand that you keep interacts with what your opponent is going to be doing. Yeah, we're just going to crack map here and get a random card. Mine or power plant, doesn't really matter. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play an island. They play Teferi. Okay. I'm glad I went with crack map there. If I didn't, and my opponent had a counterspell, they would have countered the Sylvan Scrying and then... Okay, that's actually really good. Oh, I don't have Pithing Needle in the sideboard. Yeah, that's one thing that is bad about this list I remember complaining about now. So, play Power Plant, play Star, sack Star for green. If they've got a force, we want them to blow it on this. Sylvan Scrying. Okay. So now because I have a second mine, I think the plan is to grab a second tower. Because this way if they field my tower, I still have another one. Opponent plays a Flooded Strand, representing Cryptic Mana. They uptick Teferi to 6. We untap. Draw Forest. Play an Urza's Mine. Play Karn. I'm expecting a Cryptic. Okay. Opponent cracks Flooded Strand. For a Hollowed Fountain. So they're countering and bouncing the tower. And we're going to play another Karn. Now the plan... Yeah, I think we're going to go all in on Trinisphere again. Pass the turn. So, opponent probably has a field from the way that they were playing. If they field Urza's Mine, that is potentially very, very bad for us, but they don't have the field. They start by playing an Opt. Trinisphere is not like the end-all be-all because my opponent does have an active Teferi, so we are going to need to draw something else in order to win. We untap. Draw Expedition Map. I could wish for and try and play a... like Oblivion Stone or Sundering Titan. Those are both more easily countered than Trinisphere. But like I said, my opponent just downticks Teferi to get Trinisphere. So play a tower. Wish. Take Karn down to 1. Yeah, I'm going to go for Sundering Titan. It's like 100% chance of counterspell here. Okay. Pass the turn. But because of that, my opponent doesn't have any targets to downtick Teferi on, so they don't get any unsummon value. They can still downtick him to draw cards if they need to, but we don't technically lose tempo. So if my opponent's been paying attention, they'll hit mine. They hit tower. This is only bad if my opponent is playing Surgical, because I have seen that in blue-white control before. It's a really powerful effect to have access to, though it's not always good. Opponent downticks Teferi, no targets. We untap. Draw Oblivion Stone. So, play Tower. Play Trinisphere. Okay, resolves. Uptick Teferi, no targets. Play O-Stone. I'm expecting a counterspell on O-Stone. They could do that and bounce Karn or bounce Trinisphere if they want. This may actually even be Mana Leak. Archmage's Charm to draw cards. Not what I expected. Then we play Expedition Map. Pass the turn. Opponent unsummons Oblivion Stone. Plays a Scalding Tarn. Passes. We untap. Draw an Urza's Mine. Uptick on Expedition Map. Go to combat. The only way this is bad is if my opponent has Cycle Shark Typhoon. Like, they could have Path, but Cycle Shark Typhoon would be the thing that would probably make me crack Oblivion Stone. Okay, we killed Teferi. So, Players is mine. Play Oblivion Stone. Opponent cracks Scalding Tarn. They shock Cryptic Command, and it doesn't even tell me what modes to look in the game log. Counter draw. Okay. Well, pass. Archmage's Charm to draw cards. So I think what my opponent is hoping to do is to play something like 5 mana Teferi, perhaps, and tuck Karn. Alright, so they're going to field us again. We get our last basic in our deck. We still have 7 mana next turn, we just don't have Tron. Unless I crack Expedition Map, which I am willing to do. Or we can just draw a tower. So now what is my next best get out of the sideboard here? It's actually probably a Relic of Progenitus, strangely. Because that potentially lets me start wishing for other stuff. I'm going to play Urza's Tower, just to have an excess of mana. Play Relic. This is a little more dangerous than it looks, so if we can force our opponent to counter a Relic, that's a win for us. I could see them delving their entire grave to play something like Logic Knot here. I think my opponent is trying to strategically delve and pay for a Logic Knot. I think that's what's happening anyway. They have to pay X9, X10 actually, to stop me from landing this relic. But they are really struggling with this. Counter and draw, okay. You got it, pass the turn. You're lucky I didn't have a follow-up, because you tapped down to 2 mana. But it plays Colonnade. Plays Jace. Alright, well we really need an Ulamog. We're getting Fate Sealed. That's not what I want. Show game log. They put a card on top. So on my opponent's end step, crack map. Get a Ghost Quarter. We untap. Draw Ancient Stirrings. Play Ancient Stirrings. Aether Gust. I will put Ancient Stirrings on top. Now that my opponent is tapped out, we will animate Trinisphere, go to combat, hit Jace. Problem is this sticks around as a creature for a while, so my opponent can just like unsummon it now. Play Ghost Quarter, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play a land. Trinisphere is becoming less and less good anyway. They're going to path Trinisphere. Sure. We will not shuffle. I want to draw that Ancient Stirrings. It's probably a good reason for my opponent to Fate Seal us. Yep. I could Ghost Quarter myself if I wanted to shuffle. They put Ancient Stirrings to the bottom. And then they pass. We untap. We draw a card my opponent hasn't seen, which happens to be Ulamog. I have 2, 4, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 mana. I could kill Karn, just to wish for like another relic. I think I'm going to do that. Because like this hand gets really, really good if we can get like a Veil of Summer. Its opponent is going to Snapcaster Mage. Probably targeting Cryptic. Yep. And it's probably just a counter draw here. Yep. Okay. So then what we do is we play Power Plant. Ulamog. Exiling Jace Snap. Is it a Logic Knot for 5? I imagine with like the ousts and stuff, my opponent wouldn't be countering this. But what do I know? They're the control player. Logic Knot X5. I was right. I predicted this earlier. I cannot pay 5 for Logic Knot. But we do get to exile my opponent's draw engine and win condition. And I am going to do this so they can't like Cryptic in response to bounce their own Colonnade and fizzle our Ghost Quarter. It thins their deck and forces them to shuffle, but they do only have 3 cards in hand now. Well, 4, because they just drew for turn, but they play a land, and they pass. Well, the good news is they don't immediately have, like, some big tap-out threat. Play Chromatic Star. Sack it for a redraw. We're getting Oblivion Stone. Might as well play it. Another Snapcaster for yet another Cryptic. Yep, pass the turn. Opponent probably at this point will have enough counter spells for every single Haymaker we have forever, which sucks, but there's not a lot we can do about that. Since we are playing for the match, I will try and play this out. We draw Karn. I don't think it's worth trying to get a Veil of Summer, because the odds that my opponent has 1 counterspell versus 2 counterspells that work is probably about the same. Opponent casts a Factor Fiction. You can have all this, or you can have a Snapcaster Mage. Opponent takes the Snapcaster, because it's the guaranteed Cryptic command. They do only have 19 cards in their deck, which is kind of interesting. Like, I don't think I'm going to mill them out. Not unless Ulamog actually attacks, but... The relics seem to actually matter a lot because of the Snapcaster-ness of my opponent's control deck. Yep. They counter and bounce Snapcaster. Well, that's the intelligent option, than counter-drawing at this point. So opponent has a Snapcaster, which means they have 1 more of any card in their grave. They suspend an Ancestral Visions and hit us for 2. We don't have any uncounterable threats, unfortunately. Play Chromatic Sphere. Sack it. And we got a Veil. Pass the turn. Opponent Snapcaster Mage. For Fact or Fiction. They cast Factor Fiction. Vision, Ashiok versus Teferi Colonnade. Is that right? We don't need to search our deck that much, and exiling our grave is actually a boon if we draw Karn Great Creator. So I think we split like this. Okay. Opponent takes Colonnade Teferi. That means we have to lead on Veil of Summer if we're going to cast a threat. Ancestral Vision's ticking down, though once again I'm not sure that matters. They play Colonnade. They're going to hit us for 4. Then I imagine they play out Teferi and uptick. We go to 12. Yep, there's Teferi. They may even just downtick to bounce a Snapcaster, honestly. Yep, that's what they're going to do. We untap. We draw. Tower. Play Tower. Pass the turn. Yeah, I'm not sure what gets us out of this at this point. We need Ulamog to answer that Colonnade. And Ulamog's not very good. Not a very good threat versus our opponent's deck. Possibly just eliminating threats could buy us enough time to actually win the game, unless my opponent's playing like a weird deck with Thassa's Oracle in it. But I think between the Snapcasters and the Colonnade, we're in trouble. Ancestral Visions comes off in 2 turns. They have an Ashiok. Okay. Okay, they mill us and exile our grave. Okay. They hit us for 2. They're not going to worry about the Colonnade until it's absolutely necessary. Opponent upticks Teferi. We untap. Draw Sphere. Play Sphere. Sack it for green. I don't think this matters. Play Veil. Wow, opponent's having to think real hard about this one. They opt in response. Opponent flashes in a Snapcaster. Hitting an Archmage's Charm. They counter Veil. Okay. So we are going to play Karn. Question is, what are we going to do with Karn? My opponent has 8 power on board, counting the Colonnade. I could downtick on the Colonnade to have my opponent's clock. I could uptick to take a card out of their hand, but then they can take us to 2. I don't know if they have any more Snapcasters. There's a 3rd one in exile. It's unlikely they have the 4th. I'm going to take Colonnade from them. They can just attack and kill Karn, but we've almost completely run their deck out of counterspells. Okay, Ancestral Visions coming off Suspend, I think? No, not yet. They play Luminarch Ascension. Uptick Teferi to 3. They mill us and exile stuff. Not really any action spells, though. They play Flooded Strand. They play Jace. They're Fate Sealing us. They put a card to the bottom. Yeah, they have to attack Karn, take him to 1, and then hit us for 2, take us to 8. Interesting. We untap. We draw Expedition Map. So, play map. I'm not going to crack it. We still have a blast zone in our deck. Uptick on our opponent. Okay, we get a spell snare from them. Pass the turn. Actually, do I crack map now? Because if I crack map now, I can play blast zone and tick it up to 2. Yeah, we do this. I was thinking I needed to interrupt the Jace Fate Seal. I can't search my library. Never mind. Oh, I always forget about Ashiok. Alright. Ancestral Vision's coming off suspend. Opponent's going to draw down to 4 cards left in their deck. We are dead next turn, I think? Not officially, because we can downtick Karn to kill a snap. They're going to field our tower. I mean, if we get an Ugin and can somehow resolve it, we win the game. They mill us with Ashiok again. They uptick Teferi to 4. They attack us for 4. We go down to 4. Untap. We draw another Karn. So, exile a snap. Play Karn. Keep the new one. Exile the snap. Pass the turn. Opponent gets a second counter on Luminarch Ascension. They only have 3 cards left in their deck, so they can't really downtick Teferi. They Fate Seal us. I think given the opportunity, we have to exile Jace, or maybe Luminarch Ascension, because I can start building up cards in my hand to survive a Jace ult for a few turns. Okay, we draw a Sphere, play Sphere, sack it to draw, Power Plant, uptick Karn, pass the turn, -12, so they have to uptick him this turn, uptick him next turn, and then alt. So I can downtick on Luminarch Ascension this turn. They mill us, and then they Fate Seal. We untap. We draw. Ancient Stirrings. Not that many cards left in our deck. Exile Ascension. This is our one chance to get rid of it. Ancient Stirrings. Aether Gust. Well, put it on top. Pass the turn. Then we can downtick to kill Jace next turn, and I think they're out of win conditions and can't win in the time limit provided. They have another Snapcaster. That's not good for us, because that means we can't downtick to kill Jace. Although we may just beat them because they're clocked out. They untap. We're F6'd. They go to combat. They hit us. We go to 2. Alright. So, I didn't concede because we technically still had a route to victory. I could have downticked to kill the Snapcaster Mage, and then my opponent would have had to uptick and go for the Jace. We would have drawn... They had to Fate Seal us this turn, and I don't think they would have let us have the Ancient Stirrings. I almost said Ancestral Recall. It's not the card. Very different card. Moto is not letting me see what I would have drawn next. It kind of depended on what was underneath the Ancient Stirrings, but my opponent ran out of clock, and we always had a path to victory, so I didn't feel like it was worth conceding. So we're technically 3-0, and I will see you guys in round 4. Alrighty, round 4. We will be on the play. This hand technically works, but we do have way better 6s. Not a very good 6, so they're still better 5s, excuse me. So, going to 5. I can work with this. Okay, we'll keep. Put back Blast Zone and Forest. Put back Blast Zone and Forest. Done. Not cancel. Done. Play an Urza's Mine. Play an Expedition Map. Pass the turn. Kind of hoping my opponent's playing a deck that Wormcoil is going to be good against. That's where we are right now. My opponent mulliganed to 4, and they are also on Tron with Expedition Map. So, hoping we draw a threat that interacts with their mana. Let's go get a Power Plant. Pass the turn. Opponent does not have the second land. That is huge. What that means is we start Sphere, sack it for green, and play Wormcoil. We want to draw the extra card there because if we can draw a threat like Karn, we need to. Opponent cycles Chromatic Star for green, plays Chromatic Star, we untap, draw Ancient Stirrings, play Star, cycle it for green, draw Ulamog, Ancient Stirrings, Power Plant, rest of the bottom, play Power Plant, go to combat, attack for 6. Okay, opponent untaps. Opponent cycles Star for green, Ancient Stirrings. They found a forest, so they get a second land and an Expedition Map for a small glimmer of hope, just in time for us to wrench it away. Alright. Game 2 versus Tron. We definitely want the Nature's Claims. I don't think we want the Dismember, and we'll cut a Worm Coil and a Thrag Tusk. Worm Coil just in case we need to wish for it, and Thrag Tusk because it's the hardest threat to cast that does nothing 99% of the time. So our opponent will be on the play. We got very lucky that game. Oh, Sphere, Star, Power Plant all make this hand good. We even have a redundant tower. I'm going to risk it and keep this hand. Expedition Map first draw also is really good. Opponent starts Star. There it is. Play map. Pass the turn. I really miss the Sorceress Spyglass / Pithing Needle in this matchup. Okay, opponent cracks Star for green immediately. Plays a tower, so it's probably a Sylvan Scrying. They play Chromatic Sphere. Okay, so they either have Natural Tron into a threat, or they don't have anything. So play tower and pass. They crack Sphere for green. Play another Star. Sack Star for green, and I think we've got them. They found Tron, and they play O-Stone. Okay, well that doesn't mean immediate game over. So Expedition Map, we go and get Power Plant. The question is, which Tron land do we hit? Play Karn, and I think it's just Tower. It's probably the land they're most likely to have a duplicate of, but I could see a situation where my opponent was like, they have like a bunch of Tron lands. They didn't have a redundant tower, and so we win the match. Alright, well we're 4-0, and going into round 5, I'll see you guys there. Sorry, opponent. I just happen to have better Tron luck than you, but the last 3 or 4 times I've played Tron, I've had worse Tron luck than my opponent, so law of large numbers, it was bound to happen eventually. Alright, round 5. We are on the play, and I would like to play first. We have Natural Tron plus Ghost Quarter Worm Coil, so I am going to keep. Hopefully it's a good hand versus whatever my opponent's playing. Opponent keeps a 7, so we'll start hers as mine. Pass the turn. So right now I'm hoping to top deck like a Karn. Alright, opponent starts Scalding Tarn. They're probably through the Breach combo then. That's what I've been seeing in the like high elo win rate area. Okay, it could be Grixis. Or could just be like Rakdos. Could be it's Dredge. That's what it is, it's Dredge. Yep, called it. They milled double Creeping Chill. They milled 3 prized amalgams. If I could top deck a Karn Great Creator and wish for Cage, it would be game over. We get an Oblivion Stone, so play a tower. Go Gadget Worm Coil Engine. Pass the turn. Opponent has no dredgers in the grave, so they get a natural draw here. The good news is we have Ugin, which is a huge boon versus my opponent's deck. They pick up 3 lands with Life from the Loam. They get a Scalding Tarn. They crack it. I suspect they're going to discard some dredgers due to hand size, but they could also be like haggling here. They shock a Blood Crypt. They cycle Forgotten Cave. Alright, they're getting back their prized amalgams this turn, so if we could top deck an Ugin, that would be fantastic. So opponent gets back 3 tapped amalgams on their end step. Next turn, they will have access to an Ox. They probably just discard some dredgers here. Probably the big ones. They'll keep Loam in hand. The good news is we're playing a version of our deck that runs relics in the main, so hopefully we have a little bit of game here. I didn't see if my opponent picked up any basic lands, which I should have checked for. So we hit our opponent for 6, gain 6, play Worm Coil Engine, and play Oblivion Stone. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They dredge, get an Archamoeba. Probably playing Ox here, I think. They could Conflagrate, although they might try and save Conflagrate for... never mind. They Conflagrate a Worm Coil Engine. This does make our Oblivion Stone activation much worse, and it does empty their entire hand. They play a Mountain, they get back some Bloodghasts, they go to combat, they swing with a team, so chump and chump, lose 1 life total. We untap, we draw Karn, so play Ghost Quarter their green source. I'm not sure what card they kept in hand, but I don't know if it was green mana. They do have multiple basics, so we play Karn, go to combat, attack for 6, hit our opponent for 10, wish with Karn, we'll get a Grafdigger's Cage, activate Oblivion Stone, Worm Coil tokens, and play Cage. Nice. I don't think that was like a permanent way to win, but it was a way to... it was a way to buy us a ton of time, and in theory, with active Worm Coil tokens and my opponent having under a Grafdigger's Cage, they're going to be in trouble. Now, I could bring in the Grave Hate to the main deck, but I don't think I'm going to do that. I actually think that is not what we should be doing in this matchup. I also could bring in Dismember, because it can kill things like Ox, but the majority of the time I think Dismember is actually going to be bad. Veil of Summer helps if they're playing a version that runs Thoughtseize. Nature's Claim, they could be playing Damping Sphere. I wouldn't completely discount the ability, but I don't think they do that in general, unless it's like an extremely Tron-heavy meta. Let me see if I can find a dredge list really quick, just to double check and make sure I'm not missing anything. I should probably bring in the Nature's Claims for... apparently the most recent dredge list is running Ley Lines, as well as Pithing Needles, so I will bring in probably a claim or two. And I'll bring in a claim over an Ulamog. I'll just run the one. Okay. I don't think this hand is good enough to keep. We'll mulligan. It is worth noting that we do have Relic in the main deck, so if we have a hand without Relic that's mediocre, we should probably mulligan it anyway. I'm going to 4. Alright, well, we have Tron in theory. Opponent starts Bloodstained Mire into a Stomping Ground, probably Shriekhorn. Could be a Haggle, but it's probably a Shriekhorn. And it is. We untap, draw Thragtusk, play Urza's Mine, play Chromatic Star. The reason I kept this rather than the... what is it? Expedition map that was in my opener. Opponent mills into a Narcomoeba. The reason I did that is because if my opponent wants to Ancient Grudge this Chromatic Star, it is bad for us, but we still draw a card out of it. Whereas if I had taken map, my opponent would just fire off Ancient Grudge right now and I can't do anything about it. Opponent is Cathartic Reunioning, I think. Red-blue, they cast Narcomoeba. I don't know about that. We get hit for 1. Untap. We draw Sphere. So sack Star for green. We draw Tower. That's excellent, actually. Play Power Plant. And Sylvan Scrying. I think I do just get Tower. Blast Zone is not going to be as useful as a redundant tower here. This is nice because I drew another Sphere, so I can play out my Thragtusk to buy time. Okay, opponent mills themselves into a Creeping Chill, also milling a Cathartic Reunion. They can attack us for 2 this turn. Opponent Cathartic Reunions, pitching an Amalgam and a Bloodghast. So still no Dredge, but they do get back a Bloodghast and Amalgam trigger. They hit us for 2, down to 14. Kind of what we're hoping for now is an Ugin. Draw another Urza's Mine. Play Tower. Play Sphere. Sack it for green. We get a Blast Zone. I can work with a Blast Zone. It's just not ideal here. Gain 5. Pass the turn. So depending on what my opponent does and how they attack is going to dictate what I block. Obviously, blocking Bloodghast is the least risk, least reward. Trading with an Amalgam is possible. Cathartic Reunion, dumping Mountain, and Creeping Chill. I think my opponent is digging for Grave Hate. Or anti-Grave Hate. Okay, they play a Blood Crypt tapped. They did that prior to attacking. So I'm going to kill the Bloodghast. We'll take 5 and go to 14. They should have waited to play that land. There was literally no opportunity cost loss. We draw another Power Plant, so play Blast Zone. That or they wanted Bloodghast in the grave because they do have lands now. I'm not going to attack here. I do need to draw something else. I need to draw like an Ugin. I'm going to put Blast Zone up on 2 because it can at least fog a Bloodghast and kill the Narcomoebas. Another Cathartic. Finally hitting a Dredger. And they dump another Ancient Grudge as well. So now they're starting to dig real deep. Then get back an Ox, and I think that dredges the rest of their cards. So they play a Bloodghast. They get an Amalgam trigger. I may have to put Blast Zone on 3 just to fog the Amalgams. But now is the time for us to draw, ideally, Ugin. Oblivion Stone would at least get us a little ways. I wouldn't mind, like, if we top-decked a Relic and cycled it into, like, an Ugin. That would also be acceptable. Opponent plays an Ox. They're going to dump their hand and draw 3 new cards, or dredge 3 new cards. They get an Amalgam trigger. They dump Imp, Imp, Thug, Tarn, Dredge, Dredge, Creeping Chill, and another Amalgam, Dredge, and Narcomoeba. So we're getting hit for 6 here, so Bloodghast is going to have haste. So we really do need to draw Ugin, I think, to stay alive. And that may not even do it, because my opponent does have Conflagrate, so... I think I'm just going to go max Prevent here. We'll take 4, but we're dead to Conflagrate next turn. Even if I do Ugin the board away. I would have to cycle Relic into Ugin. Okay, we untap, draw Worm Coil, and that's not going to do it. Alright. On to game 3! I think we're set up as good as we can be. Like I said, I can bring in Tormod's Crypt, Grafdigger's Cage, but that does make Karn worse. Especially if I bring in Tormod's Crypt, because sometimes you do need to wish for it. But this is for the trophy, so... we gotta try hard and Tryharding. I'll play first. Oh, this is so close. But I think I actually have to mulligan. This is a turn 4. That may not be fast enough. But I am going to try it. We're going to hope for good top decks. We are on the play, so we do at least have a little bit of the tempo advantage for mana efficiency, but we're playing against a deck that doesn't really use mana, so... Start by playing a power plant into an expedition map. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. Plays a stomping ground untapped. Nature's Claims our map. I don't think that was correct. So, play forest, play star. I'm not going to play out map. I could technically, because my opponent has already used a Nature's Claim effect, but I'm just going to cycle. Okay, opponent haggles. They're on 1 mana, so they're going for 1 mana Dredge, it looks like. Or they're holding a mana back for potential Bloodghasts. I guess that's also possible. Yeah, okay, that's what was happening. And they did it on their upkeep to see if they could hit other Dredgers, but they did not. I am going to cycle here because I do have green mana on board. Another map is not really what I wanted. We untap, draw Sphere. Okay, now we map. Pass the turn. So opponent is holding a Dredger. Cannot play Ox out of the grave this turn. They may have a Cathartic, and that would be the worst for us. But they also could just have a really awkward hand. They play a Stomping Ground untapped. Are they playing Merchant? They are. Alright, we untap. Good draws, good draws. We draw a tower. So, play Sphere. Sack it for green. Play tower. And we're going to play Relic. I know it's very tempting to have... it's very tempting to just activate for the last Tron land, but I can wish for Grafdigger's Cage next turn, and I have an active Relic, so if they get a big Dredge off, I can negate the first one. Okay. Also, if they, cast an Ancient Grudge or something like that, that's going to take their whole turn. They play a Bloodstained Mire, they crack it immediately. They shock. Opponent goes to combat. Attacks us for 2. We go to 19. Okay. Opponent passes. We untap. We draw Ancient Stirrings. Ancient Stirrings. Get Urza's mine. Rest of the bottom. Pretty sure this is going to be GG. Play Karn. Wish. And we are going to get Cage. Play Cage. Crack map. And we'll get a redundant tower, I think. Exile a card from my opponent's grave. So they will get 1 Dredge off here. But Ancient Grudge is no longer a way for them to destroy artifacts unless they cast it from hand right now. But I'm pretty sure that the reason they were tapping earlier is thinking about doing exactly this. Discarding Thug and then potentially dredging. So now they're not even dredging, they're cycling because they need to try and find Grave Hate for Cage. Well, they just dredged into 2 Narcomoebas that they can't get back. Because Cage stops creatures from entering from the grave, and Narcomoeba enters from the grave, it doesn't enter from the library. Opponent discards Thug, no value. They attack Karn down to 1, so we cannot wish for Bridge this turn, but that's fine. We draw Sphere, play Tower, play Ugin. kill the merchant. Exile relic to draw. Get a Thrag Tusk. So uptick Karn, no targets. Pass the turn. And I think we've got him. It's a little premature to declare that, but I think we've got him. And we got there. Whew! 5-0 with Tron. Finally, it's been long enough. Let's open up our treasure chest, shall we? Alright. Treasure chest, number 1. We get a coat of arms and 10 play points. Treasure chest, number 2. We get a Kaldheim booster pack, a Molten Steel Dragon, and 5 play points. Treasure chest number 3. 5 play points, a Jinxed Choker, and my favorite card, Unexpected Results. Well, one of them. Treasure chest number 4. 20 play points, and a Crater Elemental. Treasure chest number 5. 10 play points, and a Scarblade Elite. Treasure chest number 6. 5 play points, a Liliana Dreadhorde General, and a Captivating Crew. Treasure chest number 7. 5 play points, a Portent, which is kind of like Ponder, but worse, and a Doubling Cube. Treasure chest number 8. 15 play points, and an Inexorable Blob. Treasure chest number 9. 10 play points, Phyrexian Revoker. Treasure chest number 10. 5 play points, Heliod the Sun Crowned. Coming in at 2 tickets, as well as a Disaster Radius. And treasure chest number 11, final treasure chest. 35 play points and a Worship. Not bad. Not bad at all. So let's go ahead and take a look at our Tron list again here. Is this the one that I played? I think this is the one that I played. Yeah. So I said this a little bit in my last video, and I want to make this point here again. This deck is pretty... This version of this deck is pretty tuned for the metagame. And we played against mostly the metagame decks. And if Goldfish is accurate and Blue-White Control is one of the most played decks in Modern right now, I think the case is dropping either probably the Oblivion Stone out of the side, honestly, and throwing in at least a 3rd Veil of Summer. But that's just purely a meta consideration. I think you need the relics in the main for Dredge. It was so important having access to the main deck Grave Hate versus our 5th round opponent, which was Dredge. And I think the numbers on all of the threats, you know, the consistency tools, everything like that is fine in the main deck. I like playing the 2 Ulamog. We were lucky we didn't run into Mill because I didn't have Kozilek. But really, like, this list, I've got a feeling is the Tron list currently. Just, you know, plus or minus 1 or 2 cards in the main deck or sideboard, depending on what kind of decks you frequently match up against. Now, I understand, and people will point this out, that the... You know, Kano, you only 5-0'd because your control opponent timed out. Well, my opponent didn't manage his time correctly. And I wasn't purposefully manipulating the clock. You know, I wasn't like getting weird about when I'm passing priority and trying to get him to tick down his clock. No, I still had a path to victory. And if it was like absolutely clear that there was no way for me to win at that point, I would have conceded and let him have the win. Just because I understand what it's like to play control deck on Moto in Modern. Especially when it's me and the client lags and I basically lose by default because of the lag, because my clock is like so much worse than my opponent's. But it was a really interesting game 3 in that match, and we were recovering because my opponent had Cryptic 7 times and then didn't have any more answers. And they didn't have any more ways to attack our life total, so I thought. They did have the 4th Snapcaster, but like I said, what mattered in that one is what was under that Ancient Stirrings. That card determined whether or not we were going to win versus Jace. Going back to the last video that I did, I talked about how, you know, there's a snowball effect where if you're losing, if you lose round 1, you lose round 2, you start playing against decks that aren't in the metagame, and you start, like, you know, your metagame tunes become worthless, or at best, like, they're kind of tangential to what your opponent's doing. So anytime that there is a snowball effect, almost any time there's a snowball effect going one direction, there's also a snowball effect in the other direction. So if my deck is tuned for the metagame and I win those crucial rounds of round 1 and 2, there's a snowball effect of all of the off-meta decks have gotten into the losing bracket. You know, unless there's a particular, like, metagame crusher deck that somebody figured out just prior to, like, a GP. And then you're going to lose anyway, because that person's destined to win. Because they really did their research. But Generally, if you're tuned for the metagame, your matchups are going to be better. You're going to know how to play them. And if you start winning, instead of snowballing away from the meta, you start snowballing towards the meta. And you're going to play against decks that you know how to beat, or you know what lines to take against them. I got lucky this league, and my Tron luck has been a lot better. I've had a lot more hands where it was just turn 3 Tron, and that's just the kind of hands you want when you're playing Tron, and you're not always going to get them. My last, 6 leagues can attest to this, but this league I got there, and it happened. And we won those first critical rounds because of it. I'm not saying that, our deck was tuned necessarily to beat either one of those round 1 or round 2 opponents, but we had the tools somewhere, and we got lucky enough that we, eked out a win. And then, we had a much easier time versus the rest of our opponents. We had much clearer lines. We knew what we were doing. And so this is the exact converse to the last league that I played, where I was talking about how you don't want to get yourself down. You don't want to go on tilt because, then it's just going to be worse. You're going to lose extra percentage points. You don't mean to. But the critical point of what I was trying to say during that time was, for as many of those leagues as you have, if you keep a good attitude or tournaments, not leagues, but if you keep a good attitude about it, I am not bothered by my last league at all. I was totally fine with it at the time. I was actually a little bit disappointed, but I worked through it. I talked it out. That's how I got it out, and I felt better about it. And look at that. We came back strong this league, and we got the 5-0, which is not something that has happened to me in a long time. I don't 5-0 with my meta decks usually. But I occasionally get a 5-0 with some of the mad meta decks. I very rarely 5-0 with Tron. I usually the only time I 5-0 is with a meta deck is Blitz, I think, is one of the strongest decks, because it's one of the easiest decks for me to pilot. When it's in a good position in the metagame, it's unbeatable. It feels like it when you're playing it anyway. But, had a good attitude, tried to focus, got a little lucky, and made good plays. And we 5-0'd. So I hope this video is entertaining for the rest of you guys, and I really want to thank you all so much for watching. Probably about this time, the stream VOD for the St. Patrick's Day stream will be going up. It's really silly. We played a bunch of Vintage Cube. I got a stipulation where I had to talk in a very annoying voice for one of the 2 cubes that we played, and not everybody left. So I count that as a win. We had a ton of support. Tons of people from YouTube showed up and stuck around. It was a great time. And I want to thank everybody again for showing up to those, because that is really the highlight of my week. Even when I'm dreading being social, or I feel I can't project, can't perform, I settle into the stream. I realize I'm not performing. I'm just being me, and I have fun, and it helps. It's helping me with a little bit of social anxiety that I have, but it's always a good time. Even when it's bad, it's still pretty good. That's what I'm saying here. So if you guys want to hang out with me live, feel free. If you can, try and make the Twitch Wednesdays. I'm going to try and have another stream day coming up soon. One of the days will be, I'm going to stream on my birthday, because all of you Twitch degenerates that ask me, or that say happy birthday to me every single day that I stream, I'm going to be like, haha, gotcha, I actually streamed on my birthday. So keep an eye out for a non-Wednesday stream. I'll probably announce it in the Discord. So if you want to hang out with everybody else that was having a ton of fun, and you want to do it on a day that's not Wednesday, Discord's the best way to do that. The link's in the description below. It's a ton of fun. We've been brewing up decks. I'm going to get back to playing some of the requested decks that I've been getting. So, yeah, I think that's all of the announcements that I have, and I just want to say thanks to everybody. We're getting really, really close to monetization on YouTube, which is super, super exciting, and 2021 is shaping up to be a really, really good year. So, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye! You're all wonderful human beings.